And now I will ask you to please join me in welcoming today's speaker, Reverend Robert Yarnall. We are so happy to have
you. Good morning. Good morning to everyone in Zoom land. It is great to be back here. Am I in frame? Oh, there I am. Good morning. I love sharing the silence with you. Letting go, is that mine? Oh, that's yours. Okay, good. Sharing the silence with you, which is always very meaningful to me, as I've mentioned before, starting out my life as a Quaker and then moving through various disciplines. Silence is precious, and it's a kind of letting go. I'd like to start the talk today with a poem by the Sufi mystic Hafez. You have been invited to meet the friend. No one can resist a divine invitation. That narrows down all of our choices to just two. We can come to God dressed for dancing, or be carried on a stretcher to God's ward. Which reminds me of something I've heard, that everyone gets into heaven. Some of us will go there willingly, and everyone else will be dragged there kicking and screaming. Because we resist, right? We resist so much in life. Now, the Sufis, also known as the whirling dervishes, would literally spin around, and they would recite words that came to them from God. They got out of themselves and into a mystic trance, connecting to something beyond the small self. They were out of their minds, if you will, and yet more sane than most of the people around them, probably including today. Throughout their writings, we can feel the letting go, the freedom and radical God experience that they had. They point to this experience in wonderful ways that explode our expectations and open our hearts. And I've come to really love them for that reason. Now, as my talk title indicates, I'm looking today at faith and letting go. Your topic of the month is, in fact, faith. Now, letting go as a general practice means trusting that things will be okay and that the universe or God is on our side. We have not just a friend, but the friend, as Hafez suggests. And trust in the friend or God is what we call faith. Faith, as you may have heard, can be placed in all kinds of places, but when we speak about it somewhere like here in a spiritual setting, we generally mean a kind of knowing trust that God or infinite intelligence, a confidence that underlies our life, is behind everything. Building our house on a rock, as Jesus memorably put it, as opposed to on the sand of impermanent things. Now, hopefully we have a living, felt experience of a loving God. When we have that, it makes letting go much easier because we know that something is there to let go to, that we trust. If we don't have that, then letting go is either too frightening, or we just let go into kind of a nihilistic life as if nothing really matters. No laws or standards, just look out for number one, party all the time. And that's not what we're talking about today. That kind of empty letting go, what you might call let go and let ego. Right? What I'm talking about today is more of along the lines of let go and let God. And we need faith to do that. We need some kind of trust. Now, I think the phrase let go is an interesting one. I believe it originally started as let someone leave, let her go, right? Let him go. We also, of course, use it if we're holding a rope, we let go, falls to the ground. But in spiritual terms, I believe it means to allow movement, to let going happen. One of the ways we can look at human life is through the lens of resistance and allowing. We look at ways that we resist, ways our energy is blocked, and therefore things are not in the flow, so to speak. We don't allow them to move, allow them to go. Rather than letting something happen, letting go, we resist. So here are just a few examples of the ways that we resist in everyday life. We argue, complain, we force or control. We insist, pout, punish, or angrily withdraw. We try to get even with our minds or with our actions, as opposed to not resisting, which is what Jesus and so many people tell us. Turn the other cheek, resist not an evil person. We overthink. That's one of the ways we can resist. Addictions are a main source of avoidance and resistance. Denial, that doesn't exist at all. We dismiss or laugh off. And here's the big one, we focus on other people's problems. Now, letting go of that means that we honor others even as they hold on in various ways. In fact, letting them hold on is part of our letting go. Then there are some major categories of resistance. One of these is emotions, which I like to think of as energy in motion, emotions. Refusing to let that energy be in motion, it gets stuck in us. And that does tremendous harm spiritually, mentally, and even physically. It's one of the reasons many people believe that men live shorter lives. We are taught not to feel those emotions, keep them stuffed in. A second major form of resistance comes from our roles in society. Whether learned or foisted on us, they constrict us, limit us from outside and inside. Roles of gender, class, race, nationality, national identity, and mythology, the stories we tell about ourselves. As we work for social justice to rid ourselves of such outer limitations, we may become aware of inner limits we've picked up, ways we've taken on some of the messaging around gender, for example, or what it means to be a good spiritual person. That can be a role, right? It has to look like this. So these are all examples of ways we resist. Now, what do we do about all this resistance? We want to get practical. So how do we let go? It's an ancient question, and fortunately, there are many ancient answers. Around 500 BC, the Chinese philosopher Lao Tzu presented his teachings in the Tao Te Ching. I will use a translation today by Stephen Mitchell. Tao is often translated as the way, but don't get too caught up in words. The very first thing, in fact, that the Tao says is the Tao that can be named is not the real Tao. So let go a little of your mental concepts, allow the words to inspire you, and understand that they are pointing towards something. The Tao is very much about letting go, being in the flow with nature or God, as we might say. It's a life of non-resistance and ease, but not always simple. So after talking right in chapter 2 about how opposites create each other, if we have down, we have up. If we have good, we have bad, warm, cold. He says in chapter 2, therefore the master acts without doing anything and teaches without saying anything. Things arise and she lets them come. Things disappear and she lets them go. Then in chapter 10, can you deal with the most vital matters by letting events take their course? Can you step back from your own mind and thus understand all things? And then in chapter 48, in pursuit of knowledge, every day something is added. In practice of the Tao, every day something is dropped. Less and less you need to force things until finally you arrive at non-action. When nothing is done, nothing is left undone. True mastery can be gained by letting things go their own way. It cannot be gained by interfering. So there's so much ancient, beautiful wisdom there. Now, in my life, I've practiced something I call high quality doing nothing. Like when you're in an argument where both sides know 100% that they are right and you're not making any progress. Can I allow the other person to leave my space and not chase after them? Not try to explain or fix or apologize or do anything at all. Can I sit with my feelings, with my certainty of rightness, and just breathe and do nothing? I don't mean the silent treatment or passive aggressive energy. I'm talking about just breathing and holding on to the possibility that I might not be 100% correct about everything. And that sliver of doubt sometimes is enough for something bigger to come in. And then just notice what's going on and be with it, to withstand with it, right? To stand with that energy. Trust that all is well, have faith. Now, in my experience, it can feel like there are wild horses pulling me forward to say that thing that I need to say, that one thing that will finally make everything clear to the other person, right? All right. Oh, that's pretty. So I try to notice that, even when the energy is that strong, and then do nothing. High quality doing nothing. I can also use this same practice for my private internal life. Rather than all of the internal battles and stress, I can observe and not act, not react. To use an old metaphor, I can pick the needle up off the record. Michael Singer calls this the witness consciousness. In his book, Living Untethered, published earlier this year, he says, quote, "When you reach the state where you can observe what is going on in the mind and heart, you'll notice you're not always comfortable with what's happening inside. What's more, there is the tendency to want to willfully do something about it. That's very natural. If you want to willfully do something, here's what you do. Relax. This is certainly not the intuitive thing to do. You want to protect yourself from the inner disturbance by getting rid of it. That struggle just makes it worse. You are capable of simply relaxing and not engaging with the disturbed energies. At first, it seems impossible because you're trying to get the disturbance itself to relax. Don't do that. You relax. You who notices the disturbance are not the disturbance. You are witnessing the disturbance, and you are welcome to relax in the face of it." End quote. He suggests that we allow the pain or discomfort that comes up in doing this, and that we in fact lean into it. He suggests we start with the low-hanging fruit, the easier things like being stuck in traffic or waiting for an operator to return to the line, and that we work up from there. We need to work with our stuck energies in these smaller areas before we can move up to the big stuff that we resist and fight. And it can get pretty big. In fact, Singer says we are at war with the world, which we want to be different than the way it is. And we're at war with our own internal reality, which we also want to be different. And that resistance leads to suffering. It's a form of attachment and holding on. He says that primarily we are relating at all times to one of three things: the outer world, our own thoughts, and our emotions. But we identify with them as ourself, or we react to them personally, rather than relating to them as objects. The outside world is out of alignment with how we need it to be. And that is what is causing our unhappiness, because it couldn't be me. It's them, or it's these crazy thoughts. He says, one of the most amazing things you will ever realize is that the moment in front of you is not bothering you. You are bothering yourself about the moment in front of you. And my final quote from Michael Singer is a good reminder. Letting go does not absolve you of responsibilities in your life. You are not letting go of life. You are letting go of your personal reactions to life. Your personal reactions do not help you deal with situations in a constructive manner. They actually cloud your ability to make good decisions. Those reactions. And it's an inner letting go. That's where we start. And I think it requires stillness. Be still and know that I am God, we read in Psalms. Many verses in the Bible advise us to stop resisting, to let go to something bigger. Seek first the kingdom of God and all else will be added. Jesus is always telling us not to worry. Resist not an evil person, as I mentioned earlier. And Proverbs 3:5, trust in the Lord with all your heart and do not lean on your own understanding. Or as Rumi said, put your thoughts to sleep. Do not let them cast a shadow over the moon of your heart. Let go of thinking. Now that's an interesting thing to hear in a New Thought Center. But what do we actually believe here? Well, that we are aligning our thoughts with the great thoughts, the great energy of infinite intelligence. By letting go of our cherished ego thoughts, we allow a bigger expression to emerge in us and as us. Now, in all this talk of letting go, the ultimate one, of course, would be death. And I promise you that will be the final time that we let go in this life. We in modern Western civilization deny that. We don't want to talk about it. We hide it away. We consider it a form of loss. They lost their battle with fill in the condition. And by that logic, that means that at the end, everyone loses, which is a strange construct. One of my favorite quotes ever is by Eckhart Tolle. Death is not the opposite of life. Life has no opposite. The opposite of death is birth. Life is eternal. That changed me. Now, in everything I'm talking about, what we're doing here is opening up our consciousness, looking at where we're frozen and blocking the natural flow of life. Where am I holding on? Where am I ice as opposed to water or steam? Now, in my life, I can think of many times I've resisted in small and large ways. I spoke about my journey to having a house. Another one is my artistic pursuits. As a child, when I would act or perform, many adults would come up and say, "You're going to be famous. You're going to be on Broadway." And they planted these ideas in my head so that when I did go to New York, that was what I thought I needed to do to be successful. I needed to be famous and I needed to be on Broadway. And, that didn't happen. And there was this pursuing and, well, I moved 90 minutes up the Hudson to Wappingers Falls. A few months into living there, walked down the street to our local theater, picked up the script, auditioned, and got a lead role in the play. And I did it over the summer and had a blast. And it was so simple. I was letting go of the notion of how it needed to look. It needed to be in New York City. It needed to pay this much. I needed to make my living on it. No, I needed to connect to my joy again. And I don't know where it leads next, and I don't need to. And there's something wonderful about that. I can have a bit of a humor about my own ambitions. Laugh at myself a bit in a healthy way. And in fact, I think humor is a very good way to let go, especially that kind of humor that is loving. We can let go and be more childlike. The Passion Translation of Matthew 18, 1-3 reads as follows. At that time, the disciples came to ask Jesus, who is considered to be the greatest in heaven's kingdom realm? Jesus called a little one to his side and said to them, learn this well. Unless you dramatically change your way of thinking and become teachable and learn about heaven's kingdom realm with the wide-eyed wonder of a child, you will never be able to enter in. I think one of the reasons I love the Sufi poets is that they have that childlike wonder mixed with an almost magical wisdom, so the deep messages land with delight. When we have this quality, it's easier to let go, and faith becomes not some serious thing, but something natural. So I'd like to close today with one of my favorite poems ever. It's by Rumi, another of the 13th century Sufi mystics. And I think he summarizes a childlike letting go and a faith in the goodness of the universe when he says, this being human is a guest house. Every morning, a new arrival. A joy, a depression, a meanness, some momentary awareness comes as an unexpected visitor. Welcome and entertain them all. Even if they're a crowd of sorrows who violently sweep your house empty of its furniture, still treat each guest honorably. He may be clearing you out for some new delight. The dark thought, the shame, the malice, meet them at the door laughing and invite them in. Be grateful for whoever comes, because each has been sent as a guide from beyond. So enjoy this guest house today. Have faith that it's good with a capital G, and let yourself go. Thank you.